Hello everyone, it's been a while. Sorry for disappearing again. I think it's been about 6 weeks since I last posted something to YouTube. I just want to start this video by saying how much I appreciate those of you who checked up on me. It really means a lot to be a channel on YouTube this small with no more than 160 or 165 subscribers and still have people miss me and go through the trouble of writing a comment or sending me a message just to make sure everything is fine. Really, I cannot thank you enough for this. It really means a lot to me. And this part of this whole YouTube experience, interacting with you and reading your comments and having discussions and just feeling you on the other side of the screen, I think this is what I'm beginning to enjoy the most out of this whole thing. Anyway, throughout the past 6 weeks, I wasn't having the best time of my life, I think. Now everything is turning to the better again, but I was just extremely busy and a lot of things were going on in my life. I didn't even read that much. My last video, which was in middle of September, it was on the Taming of the Shrew, and then I was going to read Emma by Jane Austen, and I finished that by the end of September, and then for the whole of October I read basically about 150 pages of Anne of Green Gables. I wanted something cozy, something very light, and still I couldn't manage to read more than that. And I didn't have time to film my review on Emma, so this is coming today, which is the 31st of October, but I think you will not see it until tomorrow, which will be the 1st of November. So you can say basically for the whole month of October, my reading output, my film production output is zero. Film production, that's too big a word for these kinds of videos. I mean, my YouTube output, let's say. But anyway, let me stop wasting any more of your time and get into the review of this fantastic novel, Emma. My reading experience of this novel is strange because as I was reading it, I was aware that I was not actively enjoying it as much as I enjoyed all the previous novels I read by Jane Austen. There was something missing, but at the same time, whenever I picked up the book, I just couldn't put it down. I mean, it says here it's a treat and totally unputdownable, and I agree 100%. Whenever I picked it up, I just found myself very much interested in the story and wanted to know more and more, and I read for hours on end, which more than I can say for the other books that like Sense and Sensibility or Northanger Abbey or Mansfield Park. So I'm not sure what the secret is about this book. I love it, I definitely love it, but I'm just saying that I didn't feel that I was actively enjoying it. I wasn't laughing out loud. Maybe it's because I didn't care so much for the characters, or at least in the beginning, and I'm coming to that in a moment. But also I think this novel, it's a very, very long one. Maybe it's Jane Austen's longest novel, or perhaps it's up there with Mansfield Park. I'm not sure which one is longer, but it's a very long novel. And it all takes place in one place, in Hartfield, which is unusual for Jane Austen, where usually the characters just keep traveling and visiting each other, going from one place to another, and you go through them throughout the book, and that's why you don't feel how long it is, because the scenes are always changing, the context is always changing. But here it's different. Everything is happening at Hartfield, and it's a very long novel, but at the same time everything is so well knit. I guess the writing, it's so well written that you don't feel how long it is. You pick it up, you keep reading. I wouldn't take out any one passage, any one page out of this novel. It's just perfect. Another strange thing about me reading this novel is that here there are so many I wouldn't say plot twists, but ironic twists, that the characters think something and then the reality turns out to be something completely different, or sometimes even the opposite. And all of these things were, for me at least, very predictable. Like just right from the beginning, I could see, oh, I see where this is going. So it was very predictable, and all of my predictions turned out to be true. But at the same time, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it to the degree that I literally couldn't put the book down, and I wanted to see my predictions coming true, or at least seeing how things would unfold. But I think I can attribute this to Jane Austen's writing style, which is just top-notch. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the characters in this book. I said at the beginning of this review that I didn't find myself very much invested in the characters' thoughts and emotions, and I really didn't care that much whatever happened to them, as long as it wasn't something too terrible. For example, I didn't care who Emma would end up with in the end. I didn't have any strong opinions about that, or whether she ended up single. I would have been okay with any of these outcomes. But I don't think that's such a problem. I'm not sure if it's meant to be like that. I think it is, but maybe it's not. It's just my own reaction to whatever was going on here. But what I'm trying to say is that I didn't find it such a bad thing. I still enjoyed the story, enjoyed everything despite that, because I found something else. It's that distance from the characters that I enjoyed, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that later on in this review. Okay, so let's start with Emma Woodhouse, who is described as a rich, handsome, clever young woman who likes to meddle in the affairs of others, especially in matchmaking and arranging for marriages, but often with disastrous results. She's also very, very snobbish, and I think this is the quality that I found off-putting the most. And she is snobbish in the worst ways possible. For example, she's very much aware of her wealth and her social position and her influence over Hartfield, and she treats other people with, I want to say, condescension, even if it seems too harsh. But even when she's being kind to other people, you feel that she's patronizing them. For example, when she was trying to strike a match between two of her acquaintances or friends who were very different in their social standings, she could see no trouble at all in one of them stooping so low as to marry the other. But at the same time, when someone from a lower social position tries to propose to her, she is insulted. She's like, how dare he think that I would marry someone so much below me? I think that contradiction in that snobbery or in that attitude goes back to the lack of self-awareness that Emma has, which is another failing, let's say, in her character. You know, one of the movie adaptations of this book is the popular film Clueless, and Emma is clueless because she is so much involved in other people's lives, but she needs to mature herself emotionally. But anyway, the redeeming quality in Emma, the reason why I don't hate her so much, indeed the reason why I like her, is that in the end she is a very well-meaning person. Whatever she's doing it because she thinks it's for the benefit of the people that she loves and cares about. And whenever she sees that she's done a mistake, she truly regrets it, even though very soon she repeats that mistake again in one way or another, or does another more disastrous mistake, but she really regrets those and she feels bad about them. And basically this is what the book is about. This book is about Emma Woodhouse, and you see how groundbreaking this review is. A book titled Emma turned out to be about its main character, Emma. Quality content. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that this book is about Emma Woodhouse and all that she goes throughout the book, committing one mistake, regretting it, and then going into another, and then regretting it, and then going into another, until in the end she reaches a level of maturity, both emotionally and socially, let's say. The other main character in this novel is Mr. Knightley, and there is so much hype about Mr. Knightley that, to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in him. I couldn't get where that hype is coming from. I mean, granted, he is a very clear-sighted person, he's kind, warm, courteous, and he's like the moral guide in this story. You can just trust his judgments, his evaluations most of the time, and he's the only one who stands up to Emma and tells her when he thinks that what she's doing is wrong, or when he thinks that she's done a mistake or something. Everyone else just bows to Emma in one way or another, but he's the only one that is able to stand up to her. But he always does it with tact and courteousness and kindness. I get all of that, but still I think there was something missing that I couldn't get why people find him so charming. So if you read this novel and you're one of those who think Mr. Knightley such an appealing character, then please go on, explain to me what is it that I missed. Why do people find him so appealing? And then there's Frank Churchill, who is the son of one of Emma's friends. He lives outside Hartfield, and throughout the book there is so much hype of him coming to visit, and in the end he does come and visit. And actually, I like him. I know some people might make the argument that he is vain or superficial or cares too much about appearances, about pleasing others and being witty, stuff like that. But I really think that all of that comes from a good place. He does make mistakes, he messes up a lot, but I think he's all right. I mean, all of those things are not coming from a place which can be like morally condemned. I think they can be more described as lapses of judgment. So I like Frank. And then there's Jane Fairfax. I can either say too much or too little about Jane because She's an interesting character, and the role she plays in the novel is also very interesting because she provides contrast to Emma. She's a young woman, almost the same age as Emma, and she's very accomplished, better accomplished than Emma. I mean, both of them are interested in music, they play the piano, but Jane is the superior player. While Emma is quite oblivious to her own emotions, we see Jane through the eyes of Emma, and she seems to be this bland person. But as we go on through the novel, we, as well as Emma, learn that this is not the case, that actually Jane is living a very troubled life. And also, while Emma is privileged because she's wealthy, Jane is not. She's poor, she has no money, she has either one of two options. Either she marries someone or she goes on to be a governess in some school or in some situation living with some family. And seeing how Emma reacts to Jane and how she views her is really interesting. It sheds light, as I said, on Emma's character and judgment, and at the same time Jane plays such an important role in the story as a whole. I like Jane. I don't think anybody would dislike her. And then there's Mrs. Elton. My God, Jane Austen excels at writing annoying characters that I love to hate. Mrs. Elton is unbelievable. She's completely oblivious to everything, and at times it's like, oh my God, is she really saying that? Is that really how she's behaving? I love it. I love it whenever she comes on, and she's like the most annoying person ever. And speaking of annoying people, there is the rambly Miss Bates. Miss Bates is a kind-hearted, humble woman, but she likes to talk a lot, and I mean a lot. I mean, at some points she goes on for pages on end, jumping from one topic to another, mostly things that nobody cares about, neither the characters nor us the readers, and sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's painful. Actually, I said at the beginning that there is not a single page or paragraph that I would cut out of this book, but now thinking of Miss Bates, 3 or 4 pages of her rambling ons maybe are a bit too much. Maybe we can cut a little bit on those. And then there's Mr. Woodhouse, Emma's father, who reminds me so much of too many people in my family. He is this lovable, cozy old man who detests change. He's just unmovable. He views any kind of change, no matter what it is, like the worst thing that can ever happen. For example, Emma's governess, who became her friend later on in life, and she was living with the Woodhouses. When she marries at one point, actually the point where the novel opens, it's like a catastrophe for Mr. Woodhouse, and all the way until the end he keeps referring to her not by her married name but by her maiden name, saying, poor Miss Taylor, what a catastrophe for her to get married and move away. It's like he cannot even comprehend that for her this is a good change. No, it's a change then. It's definitely terrible. It's lovely to read about, but when you have examples of this in real life, it can be quite quite difficult to deal with. I think that's all I have to say about the characters in this novel. Of course, there are so many others, as is always the case with Jane Austen, but I think these are the most prominent ones. Oh, of course, there is Harriet, who plays such an important part of the story. Why did I forget her? But I mean, she's Emma's protege. She's a girl who was living in a boarding school, still is, and Emma just takes her and tries to mold her, educate her, and then strike marriages for her. Of course, the relationship between Harriet and Emma does very little good to either of them, and the results are always catastrophic. The first time, the second time, the third time. Yeah, but Harriet felt more like a device to explore Emma and what she's trying to do more than being a character on her own for me. Maybe that's why I forgot her in this review. The last thing I want to say about this concerns the narrative style. It's a very interesting style because it's in the third person, but often the narration happens through Emma's eyes. I know this is quite common nowadays, especially in modernist literature, after all the experimentation, and then now in contemporary literature and even popular fiction. It's something that we see a lot, but it's interesting to see that Jane Austen 200 years ago was beginning to explore that way of narration, and I think that's what creates that distance between us and Emma. I think it's because of that interesting dichotomy between seeing through Emma's vanity and misperception and realizing that she's committing mistake or she's very misled. I think that's dramatic irony, and at the same time seeing the world filtered through Emma's misperceptions and vanity, and it's not always clear when is which, if that makes sense. But really, the more I read of Jane Austen, the more I am impressed. I mean, this sounds ridiculous. Who am I to make a judgment on Jane Austen's writing? But what I mean to say is that it's very obvious to me that she was only getting better with every novel. I mean, I remember that I said in my Northanger Abbey review that it was obvious that this was someone who knew where they were going and were very good at their craft right from the beginning. But then you read Sense and Sensibility and you find her improving. And then there's Pride and Prejudice, which is phenomenal. I mean, I'm not going to talk about Pride and Prejudice because I think it's still my favorite book by Jane Austen, and it has this secret about it that makes it incomparable to anything else. But if I'm going to speak objectively, or at least as objectively as I can speak, I have to say that Mansfield Park, coming after Pride and Prejudice, is more well written. And then we get to Emma, which is perfect. So I'm really looking forward to reading Persuasion, her last major novel, but at the same time I feel sad about it. I mean, I guess that's why I took a break from reading Jane Austen, in addition to everything that was going on, and that I wanted something very light and cozy. But I also don't want to feel that I have read everything there is to be read from Jane Austen as far as the major novels are concerned. Of course, I know that I still have Lady Susan, some Juvenilia, other stuff that I can read, but it's sad that because these books are amazing. I think my reviews of them are becoming a bit boring because everything that I have to say about them is always all praise. Maybe if I speak negatively, it's about the characters or something, but not about the book itself. I literally cannot find a single thing to dislike about this book. And I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy this kind of thing, consider subscribing to my channel, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Cheers.